Welcome to the newest episode of the Process of Fat Loss, where our goal is to help you understand the best way to lose fat and live a healthier life. Join us as we discuss some of the toughest and most valuable topics in health and fitness. Today, we'll be looking at the GCP Keto Diet. Now, the term keto is probably one of the hottest diet terms over the past few years, but the diet is often misused and misunderstood. So we decided to create our own version of the keto diet, and that's what we'll be breaking down today. So to start us off, Trevor is going to give us some basic understanding of exactly what keto means and what the diet is.
I'm super excited to dive into this, guys. I've been on many sides of the keto journey, meaning like I've done it myself. I've gone the opposite side and thought it's completely stupid as well. I've gone down that journey many times trying to figure out what's the right and wrong. And when we're designing out the GCP roadmaps and I was going down the journey to figure out what the right diets for people over the long run, I knew keto had to be in that. And the more I dug into it and really understood where it goes wrong in mainstream media, that's when I realized we need to design our own GCP keto diet, because the way keto should be done is not really being done by the average person. So let's go ahead and break down what keto is. And we'll talk about kind of how GCP does it differently as we go along. But this is not going to be, if you've heard keto before, you've heard a podcast about keto, guys, this is not that. I promise you. It's going to be a lot different than that. It's going to be very actionable. We're going to have things to do and play, but at the same time, that this isn't the dirty keto bullshit. This is how we do it. We do it the clean, healthy way. So let's break down what keto is. Keto, for short, is ketosis. In the simplest terms, ketosis means that your body has become adapted to run mainly on fat. So if you listen to some of our other podcasts, such as the insulin effect and our pasta and rice making you fat, we'll have some links to those in the show notes or inside of here for you to click on if you haven't seen those before. But you'll have a better understanding of why being low carb and fat adapted are important for fat loss. Just a heads up before I go any farther, they're extremely important for fat loss, like almost to the point that if you don't do it the proper way, you could lose weight, but you'll probably put that weight back on. So there's a proper way to do that. So just understand, we do really believe that you have to be fat adapted to have long-term lasting effects. Simply put, by eating mainly fat and protein, we reduce the reduce of insulin. This helps the body not store excess body fat. I think that's a whole goal. When we say fat loss, it's like the issue is like it's not even a calorie reduction. It's still the conceptual size. I have to pull the fat that's in my body fat cells out, because people, when they go, they come with the jiggly arms to us, right? Or they pull their belly and like, hey, I want to lose this, and it's like, okay, there is body fat in that, and we have to extract that some way, and we have to be fat adapted to be able to actually extract that fat out. So when we become fat adapted, our bodies will then digest fat and the body fat as a main fuel source. Over time, you'll start to deplete the fat storage cells and throughout your body, causing you to reduce overall body fat. And that's why we have the process of fat loss. It's not all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're fat adapted. It's a process to get into fat adapted and then to do all the right things to continue to lose that body fat over time. That's also why I don't believe diets are short-term ideas, because like to lose, let's say on your body you have 70 pounds of excess body fat. That it takes a long time to break that down and actually use the fat from the cells. It takes a certain amount of energy expenditure after the fat's been adapted to be able to do that. So for people that like lose a bunch of weight super fast, realistically, we probably aren't losing a lot of actual body fat. We're losing other things in that journey.
Okay, so like I said, keto is a very popular diet term. It's all over food labels, social media posts, and you can probably find tons of articles and podcasts and things like that about the keto diet online. So what makes GCP Keto different than the mainstream idea of what a keto diet is?
I mean, the most simplest way to say it is it's not dirty keto. A lot of people out there know the term dirty keto, which my understanding of what I would consider dirty keto is as long as I eat in mainly a fat-based diet, I'm doing keto, right? If I'm eating less than 5% of my carbohydrates being less than 5% of my diet macros being carbohydrates, I'm keto, which is true. Like just strictly based on like statistical, like how ketosis works, that would be right. But dirty keto is just like a bullshit idea, because you can literally eat cookies, fat-based cookies, or like fat in your coffee all the time. You can eat keto cheesecakes. You can literally go through and eat nothing that has any nutrients in it and still be on a keto diet. You can see all those chips out there, the keto chips and all the keto treats. I mean, it's a humongous industry of like stuff that you can actually buy that's keto based. And we try to ignore all that stuff. If it says keto on it, that does not mean you can use it in our diet. It just means that some of those things are useful, in certain categories, but most of that stuff we don't do all the keto bullshit, right? It's about eating real food. So the other thing that's big, we're meat and protein focused, not just fat focused. So to be keto, your protein level doesn't matter at all to be in ketosis. But for fat loss, it does matter. We want your fat to be at least 30% of your diet. Most keto diets don't recommend fat. They even have the fat even lower because it can affect, because your protein can turn into like disaccharides if needed. Our body shouldn't, if it's fat adapted, shouldn't need to do that. Only if it's sugar adapted should need to do that. But technically, it could affect ketosis in small little ways. So some diets don't even recommend a lot of protein. We do. We recommend protein to be 30%. That's the number one metric when I'm doing keto or any of our diets, is the protein number first. We'll work on the other ones after that. So we're not just a fat-based diet. We're a meat. I say meat because it's protein, but I really think meat is because we try to use meat as the main source because it has so many nutrients in it. But we do know that some people are vegan or vegetarian and meat's not a thing. So it's really a protein-focused diet. We're real food-focused. When you're eating one of our diet plans, it is real food. It's not keto shakes. I think that stuff's absolute bullshit. And anybody that tries to live on that is going to have a big issue down the road. Things are going to come back and backfire on you. I'm sorry, but it will. It happens to every single person, and you're not a special little snowflake that's going to get away with it. So you have to eat real foods. And the real foods are going to be a lot of meats. It's going to be healthy fats. We'll talk about what those foods are, but it's eating real food. If you have to ask me if it's a real food, like if you have to ask me, is this, then it's not a real food, period. That's the simplest thing. If you have to call me or text me or ask me, can I eat this? It's not a real food. That's the simplest way I can tell you. Total carbs matter, not total net carbs. So the keto world has been big on this net carbs. And that's how these companies get in there. It's like net 4 grams of carbs, even though it has 36 carbs in it, but it's because it has a lot of dietary fiber in it, things of that nature that allow them to get away with putting excess sugars into it. Net carbs does not work for how we're doing it. We are strictly total carbs. So you take that number that has the net carbs on it, you actually look at the back of it, and you see how many total carbohydrates in it. If that thing has 60 carbohydrates in it, you're too high, because we only recommend 50 grams of carbs or less in our protocol. We'll talk about that more in a second. But so you just have to make sure it's not net carbs, it's total carbs matter. And the reason is for that is like that other stuff, they're trying to trick you. They're trying to make you think that you're not being sugar adapted, but you are still being sugar adapted by having that excess of stuff in there. Another thing that we've done with all of our diet styles is we've made them inflammatory free based foods, right? So we've gone through and figured out the foods that are the most inflammatory in the human body, that really help people that struggle with autoimmune diseases, which realistically is almost everybody has a variation of it, from like dry skin, eczema, to like something even more serious, like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, those things like that. So like we're trying to, in terms of that, like these inflammatory based foods, we try to eliminate those as much as possible to like protect people in the long run, because of our clients that struggle with weight loss, struggle with tons of inflammation is one of their biggest obstacles. And the last thing that makes us different is the 50 grams of carbs or less. We put a very specific number there instead of a percentage of your calories, is because we know that if we give people too many carbs, that the obstacle comes in is that they'll start to become sugar adapted and want more sugars. So if we keep that carb number lower, it doesn't allow you to put a lot of extra carbs into your diet.
So now we know the main differences between the mainstream idea of keto and GCP Keto. So who would you say should be doing GCP Keto? Who should be following this roadmap?
I mean, everybody should be doing a low carb diet that we work with, period. But the keto diet is a little bit stricter variation of a low carb diet. And we'll be having a podcast about the optimal diet eventually as well. And that will be more about that. But so in the keto itself would be people that are looking to lose body fat. I mean, period. I would say keeping your carbohydrates low in the early body fat loss is going to be really important, because our body, once you become fat adapted, and you have less carbohydrates in your system. You only need so many carbs to actually fill up the muscle glycogen in your muscles, okay? Again, we have videos about this. We have podcasts about that. I don't want to dive too deep into that. But it really being in keto or our carnivore diet, we're going to talk about again in another podcast, those two diets are going to by far be the quickest way to lose a lot of body fat over a period of time. If you struggle with any autoimmune diseases, and there's such a list of autoimmune diseases out there. I can't go through the whole list because like almost everything anymore is an autoimmune issue because of leaky gut issues that people have. And so if you have any variation of skin rashes, you have trouble, things that have been called autoimmune diseases. If you have food allergies, you're probably going to want to do a keto or carnivore style. If you struggle with frequent sugar cravings, you definitely need to do keto, even more than our low carb option, like our optimal one. We would need to go all the way down to keto because we need to eliminate as many sugars as possible and as many carbohydrates as possible because carbs are sugars. And so your body's going to be craving those excess carbs. So we're trying to eliminate sugar cravings. If we can eliminate those for long enough, then we can slowly add carbohydrates back in because you won't have the true sugar or carb addiction that you had before. We have a carnivore diet, which is even a more strict version of keto. So somebody that doesn't desire to go that strict, they'd rather be like, instead of being zero carb, they want to have a little bit of carbs in their diet. Really good for that as well. And anybody that kind of has disordered eating, regardless of if it's somebody that's on the strict like the strict more like bulimia or anorexic kind of side, that side is restricted eating, or on the other side of it, where it's like the binge eating, where I'm overeating consistently. And that doesn't get talked about enough with being like eating disorders. And we're not talking about strictly about eating disorders, but it's just that controlled eating category is if you can't control, if all of a sudden you get like a carbohydrate in front of you and you can't just have like one piece of bread, so like you're going to Texas Roadhouse, right? In a Texas Roadhouse, you have that one, if you're a person that can grab one bun and you're good, probably have control. If you're somebody that has to eat 3 of those, I know I struggle with that a ton. I am not under control of my carbs at all. When a real carb like that, like a banana, I'm fine to have one. But like if I have a real carb that's like truly just pure simple carbs, I can't control myself. We got to make sure we take back that control by getting into keto into ketosis type of version.
Right. So now we're going to dig a little bit deeper and kind of give an overview of the little more details of the GCP keto. So what are the macros? And I know you mentioned this a little bit that we use for this. And then what are some foods that we should be avoiding while eating this diet?
Yeah, so the macros for this. So macros, if you guys don't know what your macros are, that's your protein, fats, and carbs. These are the things that we actually put in like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer to make sure that we can track where your food is. So if I have a 2,000 calorie diet, these are percentages. So 65% of my diet in keto should be coming from a fat-based source. 30% should come from protein, and only 5%, we say 5% coming from carbs, but really it's 50 grams of carbs is the more metric we're looking for. But if you just put macros into a computer, that's probably what I'd put down 5%, because that's probably going to be about 50 grams for most people. Okay, so foods not to eat, we're going to start with those. Remember, we are looking at this on a toxicity scale first. First we're looking for a low carb, but second we're looking at toxicity scale. So we want to eliminate all toxic carbs, and like we can have discussions about these. I'm not going to spend much time on any of them, why they're in this category. We're just going to go through them quick, and we'll talk about those more on podcasts, or you join one of our roadmaps master classes. This is where we really dive into why you don't have these certain foods. So if you want to join one of our roadmap master classes or join our games changing transformation program, that's when we dive deep into why we chose not to have these in here. But toxic carbs like legumes, corn, breads and pastas, chocolate, mushrooms, toxic vegetables, and tubers would not be recommended on a keto diet. Toxic fats would be seeds and vegetable oils, nut butters, nut milks, most nuts, all seeds. And I know that's a tough category for a lot of people because when they're used to doing keto, that's where they live in that thing I just said in that toxic fat category. But again, toxic fats create inflammation. They might actually help out with certain levels of fat loss. However, we're looking to eliminate this fat forever, which decreasing inflammation is going to be one of the best ways to do that. And other toxic foods are in this diet would be alcohols will be toxic, sugars, artificial and processed, and soy and tofu. Soy and tofu in all of our diets can be bad because they're very inflammation-based foods.
So now let's look at the other side. What foods should we be eating?
Before we go any farther on that, so guys, these will be all listed on our recovery, when Nick goes and puts this all on the podcast show notes. These will be in there if you need to look at these again. So I'm going through them pretty quickly. Also, if you join, we in our roadmap, we have all this stuff listed out, even in more detail. I just put simple stuff on there, even more detail. But so if you need that information, like, hey, join one of our programs, or you just check the show notes, and all the stuff I do talk about will be in the show notes. So what food should we eat? Proteins will be meat, any type of meat you can think of, okay, from pork to beef. Beef's my favorite by far. Lamb's really good as well, but pork's okay too. Chicken's okay. We don't want to be when we're doing keto, we don't want to be really, really lean meats. It's okay to have a chicken breast, but if you're going to have a chicken breast, you need to have some butter with it. You need to have a little bit more fat. But chicken thighs are great on this diet. If you like a fattier meat, it's a great diet for fattier meats. Seafood's amazing because seafood usually is a little bit fattier, so any kind of seafoods are usually pretty good. Again, if you're doing something like shrimp, which is kind of low fat, you're probably going to add some butter to that. Some processed meats are okay. When I think of processed meats, I'm thinking about like nitrate-free hot dogs, brats, sausages, deli meats. Those are okay. We're looking for more of a meat. The key is the nitrate-free, which is going to help decrease some of that process issues that we have. Bone broth is really good as well. That's a protein. And eggs are an amazing source. I do recommend eggs, not just egg whites. Eggs themselves have the fatty yolk, which has so many nutrients in it. I know a lot of people struggle with cholesterol. I probably need to do a video here soon about cholesterol and understanding what cholesterol is. I can link you to cholesterol if anybody has any questions on cholesterol, on why cholesterol is not as important as people think. It's been kind of debunked for over 12 years now. So I think we need to stop talking about cholesterol because it's not important anymore. But in terms of that, like, eggs are really good. Eat the whole yolk. That's very, very good. Eating just egg whites actually has more of a negative than eating just egg yolks. Don't eat them raw. Fats, cooking oils. Here's what you're going to be cooking with mainly, because we took away all those seed oils from before and vegetable oils. So what am I cooking with? You're cooking with butter, ghee, tallow, and coconut oil. And it's okay to do those in sprays. I'm fine with that. But really, it's going to be best if you do them in like the actual scoop. Have to scoop them out or put butter on a pan. You can have dairy, whole milks, hard cheeses, and Greek yogurt. The more clean it is, the better it's going to be. The more processed milks, avoid like skim milks. Even 2% is okay, but it's not the best. It's more watered down sugar is what that is. Animal fat, so any fat you're actually eating on meat, eat it all. That's really, really good for you. We did eliminate most nuts and all seeds, but the couple nuts that we do allow are cashews, hazelnuts, macadamia nuts. And the reason is, I'm not going to go into the reason. You have to like come into our program and learn more about those, because like it's very detailed why we do those. And avocados are great as well. Carbs, all fruits are okay in the keto diet, but the key is they have to be under 50 grams. So you have to be smart with that. The veggies that we recommend, because we do not believe in toxic vegetables, and most vegetables are toxic, but we do have a few that we do think are non-toxic, which are going to be zucchini, cucumbers, and olives mainly. And then all fermented foods are good because they've already had the toxins taken out through the fermentation process. Drinks, coffee is okay. It's kind of, coffee and tea are ones that I kind of put in it just because I know I have to be able to give clients some things. But coffee you have to be very careful with your coffee, because coffee can have a lot of toxins in it, and definitely mold toxins. So you got to be really careful with coffee. I think Keurig cups are probably not the best way to go, because most of that stuff's been sitting on a shelf for a long time, which is when mold happens. But tea as well can be very, very moldy as well, so be careful with those. Water is obviously amazing. Mineral water is really good as well. Mineral water is really good while you're eating because it helps digestion. Condiments. And so this is, again, where we give a little bit of leeway, because we know if we're going to have people eat all these meats, we got to give them some wins, some things that make it a little bit easier. And so like we do have some like sugar-free barbecue sauces. Don't go nuts with them. You can't have a lot of them. But like G. Hughes and Walden Farms are pretty good. Worcestershire sauce is awesome because it's fermented. You could probably use an endless amount of that. That's no big deal there. Yellow mustard, hot sauces are amazing too. Coconut aminos instead of soy sauces are good.
Okay, so now we have the roadmap, kind of the guidelines of what the diet is, and we know what to eat, what not to eat, and some things like that. So what are some obstacles that we could have people experience while on this diet, and then how long should people be eating following these guidelines?
Yeah, so the obstacles we're running into are tracking. You have to probably track food for a while, if not the whole time you're on keto, because you need to be watching that 50 grams of carbs. That's what keeps us in ketosis. So you got to be very careful of that. So for some people, the obstacle is I don't want to track. And if you don't want to track, that's when we usually will send somebody to carnivore, because carnivore, you don't have to track on carnivore at all because you're not eating any carbs, so you don't have to worry about it. But tracking is important when you're on a low carb diet, because you have to be, at least for a long enough period of time for you to really understand what that looks like. So that's an obstacle. Limited alcohol consumption. You can't drink a lot of alcohol when you only have 50 grams of carbs, and most alcohol is going to take all the carbs, right? So like you really don't want to be probably wasting like It's between, do I get an apple for the day or do I get a shot of vodka? I mean, you're making the choice there, but you can have it, but you're going to give up any fruit for the day or anything of that nature. So very limited alcohol consumption. Keto flu for the first 2 weeks. So this is when your energies are super low. It's electrolyte imbalance issue. So what happens is with the keto flu is you're so used to having so much sodium in your diet. And because we're processed foods, we eliminate all that. So we have an electrolyte imbalance as we start to, our body starts to become fat adapted. So we just need to supplement with electrolytes to help with that process of that low energy happening. And electrolyte, like getting somewhere between 4 to 6 grams of sodium a day, can really, really help out. We use element for this, for our clients. It helps out a lot. We do carry that on the shelf. If any of you guys are members of ours, you can get those from us. They're on the shelf, but Element is an awesome tool. And then if you're somebody that really, really wants to track if you're in ketosis, we don't really worry too much about that component, but you might have to pee on a stick. And that's uncomfortable for some people to pee on it to see if they're in ketosis or not. But that's one of the things that people do. We just don't really recommend it. I don't think it's that important. How long should you do this diet? Keto really has no limitation. I think you have to do it for a minimum of 90 days to actually see any positive results or even know if you did keto right. And I'm talking about like 90 days of being consistent, not like I do keto 4 days a week and I eat off keto 3 days a week. That's not doing keto. I'm being consistent for 90 straight days. It takes between 90 to 180 days to even become fat adapted. So like it takes a long time to get, and I've even heard things that could take years possibly depending on how your body functions, but at least 90 days to actually become fat adapted. So it takes a while to become fat adapted. What we usually recommend to people before they go into our optimal diet, which is a higher diet percentage of carbs, we usually try to get women below 27% body fat and men below 21% body fat, because they just need more body fat to lose to be in a healthy category. So we try to get rid of that body fat quicker, because if we can get rid of that body fat quicker, we're going to win the battle of obesity and overcoming those health objectives inside. So we want to get there a little bit quicker with the keto diet or carnivore diet. So there's no limitation for really how long. You could actually be on keto for the next 50 years, and I don't honestly think there's an issue. Now, there could be nutrient deficiencies, but that's why we have our program to work you through what those nutrition deficiencies are, so that you no longer have to worry about those. Like something like iodine, you might have a low deficiency in iodine, but we can teach you how to supplement with that if that's an obstacle you run into.
Thanks for explaining all of that, Trevor. Do you have any other tips for someone who was following this diet?
If you're going to drink, try to only drink 1 or 2 days max. Like, don't waste much time. It's because it puts we'll have a podcast on this for sure, but alcohol puts fat loss on, brakes on fat loss, right? It literally pumps the brakes on there, because the liver and the alcohol both the liver has to get rid of alcohol and fat. Like, it digests it both through there, right? Or breaks it down both through there. So it's always going to take the alcohol first because it's a poison. So we don't want to drink very often if possible. If you want to measure ketosis, definitely buy keto sticks. That's something you don't have to do, but it is definitely really good for trying to make sure that you're following through keto. And also, don't think about it as a restrictive diet. There's so many options you can do on keto. So don't worry about like the restriction of like, I can only eat meats and vegetables and some vegetables and fruits. Like, that's still a ton of food. Just because you're used to making a casserole doesn't mean that was healthy for you to do. I know me and Erica were just talking about this. We had some French fries in the freezer. And she was like, well, I'm never going to be able to eat French fries again. It's like, yeah, that's okay. You're never supposed to eat French fries again. Like, just because it's something that actually lives in humanity doesn't mean it's supposed to be consumed. That's not the way you should be thinking about it. You should be thinking about like what I'm eating, because I feel so good. I feel so good eating this way that I'm okay with giving up that little bit of satisfaction, because I don't have inflammation. My body fat's lean. I feel great. I move all the time. I'm happy. Like, that's way more important than those curly fries in the freezer are going to be,
Yeah. So what is your call to action today for our listeners?
I don't know if I have exactly a call. It's more like your main point that I'm going to kind of say is like, it's to show that the diet roadmaps we have them here to offer for you guys. This is we're just talking about the keto one right now, but we're going to talk about optimal, and we're going to talk about carnivore, and eventually we'll talk about our zone and thermo way down the road. But those are different diet options we have. We want to make sure we had tools available for you guys to achieve fat loss, like true roadmaps. And you don't have to be perfect on these roadmaps by any stretch of imagination, but you need to make sure you know what I'm supposed to be working on and have a coach help you accomplish that. Keto can be done in many ways, and we just feel like this is the best long-term plan. Dirty keto works. It works for fat loss. Well, it works for weight loss. I don't know if it really works for fat loss exactly, but it works for weight loss. but it will come back on if you do dirty keto because you've never learned the habits on how to eat real food. So like if you do something wrong, you're going to put fat back on. There's even a deeper, I don't want to go any farther because this podcast is getting a little long already, but in terms of that, there's a deeper part to that, like why dirty keto can be really negative. If I had to have like just the most main term that I could say with any of these diets is our diets aren't short-term fixes. They are long-term diets. The reason we design these is this is not something you have to be like, I'm going to go do this for 6 weeks. I'm going to go do this for 12 weeks and I'm going to be fixed. Like, no, these are meant to help people lose body fat over a long period of time because it takes time to actually reduce body fat. People ask me a lot of times, like, why do I have so much excess skin? It's like, well, because we haven't really, one, the skin is stretched. We haven't really depleted all the fat out of those cells, right? We've just been losing weight. So we need to keep depleting the fat actually out of those cells. As we lose that inside fat, like the visceral fat, we start to reduce our size, but our skin gets a little saggy. Well, it takes time to keep eliminating that fat out of there. So these things are designed forever, really. These are forever kind of eating styles. And we have levels of them, carnivore, keto, and optimal. So you can move your way through the levels based on what your goal is.
So if people want to learn more about the GCP Keto diet or any of our other diets that we'll talk about later in the future, where would you suggest they go?
For keto in general, there's thousands of blogs out there, hundreds of books out there. But if you want to learn how we do keto, and I think we do it really, really well, we do it for long-term results, you got to join one of our 8-week master classes, join our Game Changer Transformation program. That's going on all year long, all the time. That works on these roadmaps. We do have a master class that we do a couple times a year that you can definitely join into that if you'd like to, which is a little bit shorter term one to just get a good idea of how it works. There's accountability with that, but you have to learn, honestly. It's just not going to be like all of a sudden listen to this podcast. You're probably going to need accountability for it as well. But if you're interested in one of these programs, just make sure that you let us know. We have many levels of these programs. It's not just like, one-on-one coaching, which we have. We also have weekly group coaching. We have more self-guided coaching. So we can fit almost like our modifications for our training, right? We can give you different levels based on the skill set. We have different levels of nutrition built out the same way. We have modifications, regressions for the skill set that you have and the help that you need.
Yeah. So like Trevor said, if you are interested in learning more about this roadmap or joining one of our accountability programs, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can leave a comment, send us an email, or visit our website, and I'll have all those linked below in the show notes so you can check those out and get some more information about those. I hope you have enjoyed our discussion today on the topic that we were talking about. Remember, the best time to start living a healthier life is today, so make sure to take action in your life right now. If you've enjoyed our episode, please give us a review. You can do that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can write us a review on there as well. Subscribe so you don't miss any of the next episodes, and follow us on social media so that you can stay up to date about future episodes and everything else going on here at GCP. If you have any ideas or topics that you would like us to discuss, let us know by either sending us an email, leaving us a comment, or letting us know if you see us in the gym. Thanks again. I hope you will join us for the next episode of The Process of Fat Loss.
Remember, guys, there's literally no better time to start transforming and changing than right now.